This story is titled, "My girlfriend cheated on me with my stepfather and now expects me to raise their baby, so I kicked her out and executed my sweet payback." Hey everyone, when I was 23, I bought my house with money I'd saved up from working construction through high school and community college. It took me 5 years of grueling 60-hour work weeks to make it happen. During those years, I was living with roommates, eating instant noodles for dinner most nights, and driving a beat-up Toyota Camry that was held together by duct tape and prayers. But I stuck with it because I had a goal. The house itself wasn't anything fancy, just a solid 3-bedroom ranch in a decent neighborhood with a 2-car garage where I could work on trucks. What made me proudest was that I owned it outright with no mortgage. Most guys my age are drowning in student debt or still living in their parents' basement. But I was smart with my money and had something real to show for it. The house needed a lot of work when I bought it. The previous owner was an elderly man who'd let things slide over the years. I spent every weekend for months fixing everything myself. New flooring, updated electrical work, painted every single room, and landscaped the entire yard. By the time I was finished, the place was probably worth $45,000 more than what I'd paid for it. I've always been good with my hands and take a lot of pride in doing things the right way. My family situation is pretty simple but tragic. My dad, David, is 52 years old and owns Nevada Plumbing Solutions, a company he built from absolutely nothing over the past 20 years. He started with just himself and a beat-up van, working jobs that nobody else wanted. Now he's got 12 employees, a fully equipped shop, and multiple service trucks running all over the state. The guy is worth probably $2 to $3 million now. He drives a brand new Silverado High Country that costs more than most people make in a year, and he lives in this massive house on Lake Tahoe, complete with a boat dock and everything you could want. It's a real American dream success story. My mom Linda died from breast cancer when I was 16 years old. That experience was absolutely brutal, watching her waste away over 8 months while fighting as hard as she could. The medical bills piled up even with insurance, and Dad had to sell our house and move us into a smaller place just to pay for her treatments. She fought with everything she had, but cancer doesn't give a damn how good of a person you are. Losing her during my junior year of high school messed me up pretty badly for a while. After Mom died, it became just me and Dad, and we had to become really close out of necessity. He taught me everything about working with tools, being responsible, treating people right, and honoring your word no matter what. We'd spend hours working on trucks together in the garage, go fishing on weekends, and watch football while eating pizza on Sunday nights. He never tried to replace Mom or pretend like everything was fine, but he made absolutely sure I knew I could count on him no matter what happened. Dad never remarried after Mom passed away, but he did start dating around some after a few years had gone by. He always seemed to go for younger women, though nothing ever got too serious. I used to give him good-natured shit about it sometimes. "Dad, she's younger than me," I'd tease him. But honestly, I figured he deserved to have some fun. The man had worked his ass off building his business from the ground up, and he could spend his money however he wanted. Plus, he was genuinely a good-looking guy for his age. He kept himself in shape, had money in the bank, and women seemed naturally drawn to him. The thing about my dad that I always respected was that he was completely old school when it came to values. He believed in family loyalty above everything else. "Blood is thicker than water," he'd always say to me. "Family sticks together no matter what happens." He had helped me buy my house by co-signing the loan when I was 23 and had limited credit history. He gave me solid advice about work, relationships, and life in general whenever I needed it. I respected the hell out of him and honestly thought he felt the same way about me. It just goes to show how completely wrong you can be about people, even the ones closest to you. Now here's where the real story actually starts. About 4 years ago, I met this girl named Brittany at Charlie's Bar and Grill, a place I'd go to sometimes after work to unwind and decompress. They had good food, cold drinks, and a decent atmosphere. Not too loud or crowded, just a comfortable place where working guys could relax after a long day. Brittany was waitressing there, and she was absolutely gorgeous. I'm talking 9 out of 10 territory here. Blonde hair, tall, great body, beautiful face. She was honestly way out of my league, but she seemed to notice me whenever I'd come in. She always made sure to take my table personally, remembered exactly what I liked to order, and smiled a lot when we talked. I'm not the most confident guy with women, but somehow she made it easy to talk to her. She was 24 years old, had attended some college but never finished her degree. Communications, or something equally useless, she said. She was always complaining about money problems whenever we'd chat during her breaks. Student loans were crushing her. She lived in a shitty apartment with 3 roommates. Her car was constantly breaking down, and she could barely afford groceries after paying rent. She had that whole struggling young woman thing going on that naturally makes guys want to step up and help out. I genuinely felt bad for her, you know? Here was this beautiful, sweet girl working her ass off for tips, stressed about money constantly while I was making good money and living comfortably in my own house. I started tipping her extra, like $25 on an $8 meal, and offering to help when she mentioned being short on rent or needing car repairs. "You don't have to do that," she'd always say, but she never once refused the help when I offered it. We started talking more each time I came into the restaurant. She'd sit with me during her breaks, tell me about her day, and ask genuine questions about my work. I told her about the diesel trucks I worked on, big rigs, construction vehicles, dump trucks, and she seemed genuinely interested in what I did. She said it was so cool that I could fix complicated things with my hands, that it was a real skill that would always be valuable. After about 2 months of these conversations, I finally worked up the balls to ask her out on a real date. She said yes immediately and seemed genuinely excited about it. We went to dinner at this nice Italian place across town, then caught a movie afterward. She was great company, funny, easy to talk to, and she laughed at my jokes even when they weren't particularly funny. The chemistry between us was obvious from day one. She'd touch my arm when she laughed, sit close to me in the movie theater, and gave me this amazing kiss at the end of the night that made me feel like I was in high school again. We started dating seriously pretty quickly after that first date. Within about 6 weeks, she was staying over at my place most nights of the week. Her lease was coming up for renewal, and she was trying to decide what to do about her housing situation. The apartment with 3 roommates was stressful, she explained. Too much drama between everyone, too expensive for what it was, and not a good environment for someone trying to get their life together and move forward. Being the nice guy that I was, I suggested she could stay with me temporarily while she figured things out, just until she found a better place, saved up some money, and got back on her feet financially. My house had plenty of space for both of us, and honestly, I really liked having her around. It made the place feel more like an actual home instead of just where I slept between work shifts. That temporary living situation turned into 3 fucking years of my life. Here's where I was a complete and total idiot. And looking back now, I want to punch myself in the face for being so incredibly blind to what was happening. About 2 weeks after Brittany moved in with me, she quit her waitressing job at Charlie's Bar and Grill. Her reasons seemed reasonable at the time. The hours were too stressful, and the customers were complete assholes to deal with. She told me about this one table of business guys who had been particularly rude to her, didn't tip well despite running her ragged all night, and made inappropriate comments that made her uncomfortable. When she complained to her manager about their behavior, he didn't back her up or do anything to support her. "The whole environment there is toxic and bad for my mental health," she explained to me. "I need to take some time to figure out what I really want to do with my life. I can't think clearly when I'm stressed all the time about that place and dealing with jerks every single day." Since I was making decent money at the time and had plenty of overtime opportunities available, I figured whatever, I could support both of us for a while until she found something better. She'd find another job soon enough, maybe something better than waitressing that was more suited to her talents and education. Except she never did find another job, not even close. For 3 solid years, Brittany lived off me completely. And I mean completely. I paid for absolutely everything. The mortgage, all utilities, groceries, her car insurance, her phone bill, clothes, entertainment, dining out, everything. She contributed absolutely nothing financially to our relationship or household. Her daily routine was honestly a complete joke. She'd sleep until 11 a.m. or noon every single day while I was up at 5:30 a.m., getting ready for another day of work. I'd come home at 6 p.m. exhausted from working on diesel engines all day, dirty and sweaty, sometimes injured from dealing with heavy hydraulic systems and machinery, and she'd be sitting on the couch in her pajamas watching Netflix. "How was your day, baby?" she'd ask without bothering to get up from the couch or even pause whatever show she was binge-watching. "Busy as always. How was yours?" I'd respond, hoping maybe she'd have some good news about job applications or interviews. "Oh, just relaxing and taking care of some things around here. I applied to a few jobs online earlier," she'd say casually. But she never had any interviews scheduled, never got callbacks from employers, and never even seemed to be seriously looking for work beyond the occasional Indeed.com browsing session. Meanwhile, she'd spend my hard-earned money like it was flowing from an endless fountain. She was constantly shopping online, clothes, makeup, shoes, random stuff she absolutely didn't need. Amazon packages were showing up at our door every other day with things like designer purses that cost more than I made in a week, expensive skincare products that promised miraculous results, workout clothes that she never actually used, and home decor items that just cluttered up my house without serving any real purpose. When I'd come home tired and hungry after a long day and ask what was for dinner, she'd look at me like I was completely crazy for even asking. "I don't know. What do you want to make?" she'd say with this tone like I was being unreasonable. "There's stuff in the fridge if you want to cook something." So I'd work a 10-hour shift dealing with heavy machinery and then come home and cook dinner while she continued watching TV. She never offered to help with cooking, never suggested we order takeout with her money, obviously since she didn't have any, and never seemed to consider that maybe the person who'd been working all day shouldn't also have to handle all the domestic responsibilities. Anytime I brought up the subject of her getting a job, she had excuses ready to go like she'd been preparing for this conversation. The economy was bad and nobody was hiring, she'd tell me. She was overqualified for retail and restaurant jobs, but underqualified for office work, which put her in this impossible middle ground. She was looking into going back to school to finish her degree, but she needed time to research different programs and figure out financial aid options. She was having anxiety issues and wasn't ready for the stress of employment right now. There was always some bullshit reason why she couldn't contribute anything meaningful to our household or relationship. But she sure as hell had plenty of opinions about how I should be spending my money. She wanted me to buy a newer truck because my 2019 Silverado was getting old and didn't reflect well on us as a couple. She wanted to upgrade all the furniture in the house because what I had was bachelor pad stuff that wasn't suitable for a serious relationship. She wanted to take expensive vacations to places like Cancun and Hawaii, posting pictures on social media like all her friends were doing with their boyfriends. When I explained that we couldn't afford that kind of lifestyle, especially with only one income supporting two people, she'd get pouty and passive-aggressive for days. "All my friends' boyfriends treat them better than this," she'd say with this wounded tone. Sarah's boyfriend just bought her a $600 purse for no reason at all. Ashley's boyfriend took her to Europe last summer, and they're not even engaged yet. What I should have said was, well, maybe their boyfriends aren't supporting their girlfriend's entire existence while they sit at home doing absolutely nothing productive. But I didn't say that because I thought I loved her and wanted her to be happy, even if it was slowly killing me financially and emotionally. I started picking up every single overtime shift I could get my hands on. I worked Saturdays, some Sundays, stayed late during the week. Anything and everything to bring in extra money so Brittany could have the things she wanted and stop complaining about our financial situation. Meanwhile, she still wasn't working, still spending money like we were millionaires, and still treating my house like her personal resort where everything was provided for her without any effort on her part. The worst part was how entitled she became about absolutely everything in our lives. She'd invite friends over to my house without asking me first, letting them use my Netflix account, eat my food, and drink my alcohol like it was all communal property. When I mentioned that it bothered me that she didn't check with me before making these plans, she'd act like I was being completely unreasonable and antisocial. "It's not like you're doing anything else tonight anyway," she'd say dismissively. "Why are you being so weird about this? My friends think you don't like them because you're always so standoffish." Apparently, I was being antisocial for wanting some peace and quiet in my own house after working 12 hours on diesel engines and heavy machinery. She'd also make plans for both of us without consulting me about my schedule or preferences. "We're going to dinner with my sister tomorrow night," she'd announce like it was already decided. Or, "I told Ashley we'd go to her party on Saturday, so don't make any other plans." It was never, "Would you like to go to dinner with my sister?" or "Are you free for Ashley's party?" Just flat assumptions that I'd go along with whatever she wanted to do, whenever she wanted to do it. When I complained about this pattern of behavior, she'd get defensive and somehow turn it around on me. "I'm just trying to have a social life and include you in things," she'd say. "You work all the time and never want to do anything fun or spontaneous. I'm sorry for trying to get you out of the house once in a while." But I was working all the time specifically to support her lazy ass, and the fun things she wanted to do always cost money that I was earning while she contributed nothing. The sex was admittedly good, which I think kept me from seeing how bad everything else was in our relationship. Brittany was enthusiastic in bed, willing to try new things, and made me feel like a stud. But looking back now, I think even that was calculated on her part. Keep me happy physically so I wouldn't question the massive financial and emotional imbalance that defined every other aspect of our relationship. I should have kicked her lazy, entitled ass out after the first few months of this nonsense, but I thought I was in love with her. I genuinely believed she'd eventually get her act together and become a real partner in our relationship. I thought this was just how relationships worked. Guys provide financially, and girls receive the benefits. Spoiler alert, that's absolutely not how healthy relationships are supposed to work. I was being systematically used by a professional gold digger, and I was too inexperienced and too nice to see what was happening right in front of my face. After about a year of Brittany living with me and completely depending on me for everything, I decided it was time for her to meet my dad. She'd been asking about him regularly, saying it was really important to her to have a good relationship with my family since we were getting serious. Dad had also been asking when he'd finally get to meet this girl I'd been talking about for months. I should have noticed the first major red flag immediately, but I was still too naive to see it. Brittany, who usually couldn't be bothered to get dressed up for anything, including actual dates with me, spent 3 full hours getting ready to meet my father. She did full makeup with contouring and false eyelashes, curled and styled her hair like she was going to a photo shoot, put on tight jeans that showed off her ass perfectly, and wore a low-cut top that displayed her cleavage prominently. When I asked why she was so dressed up for what was supposed to be a casual dinner, she said she wanted to make a good first impression and that it was important to her that my family liked and approved of her. "You look great," I told her, "but maybe something a little less revealing. It's just dinner at my dad's house, nothing fancy." She got defensive immediately about my suggestion. "What's wrong with how I look?" she snapped at me. "Are you embarrassed of me or something? I thought you'd want your girlfriend to look nice when meeting your father for the first time." So I dropped the subject. But something about the whole situation felt off in a way I couldn't quite put my finger on. Dad came over to my place for dinner that evening. I grilled steaks, made baked potatoes, and put together what I thought was a nice meal for the 3 of us. From the moment he walked through the door, Brittany was completely different from how she normally acted. Usually, Brittany was pretty quiet and reserved around new people, especially older men. She'd told me multiple times that she had some unresolved issues with authority figures because of her complicated relationship with her own father. But with my dad, she was suddenly chatty, charming, and animated in ways I'd never seen before. She was hanging on his every single word like he was the most fascinating person she'd ever met. She was laughing at all his stories, even the ones that weren't particularly funny. She was asking detailed, probing questions about his business, his success, and his background. This was especially weird because she'd never shown any interest whatsoever in my work when I'd try to tell her about my day. When I'd attempt to share stories about projects or problems I was dealing with, she'd zone out completely or change the subject to something about herself. But suddenly, she was absolutely fascinated by plumbing contractors and construction projects. "That's so interesting, David," she kept saying throughout dinner. "You're so smart to build a business like that from absolutely nothing. It must take incredible intelligence and determination to be that successful." She was laying the compliments on thick, way too thick for a normal first meeting. My dad was eating up every bit of the attention, of course. He's always enjoyed being the center of attention, especially when it comes from attractive women. And Brittany was giving him her completely undivided focus for the entire evening. He started telling longer stories, showing off more than usual, and making extra jokes just to see her laugh and react. "So this is the girl who's got my boy acting all domesticated," he said at one point, winking directly at Brittany. "There must be something really special about you to settle him down like this." Brittany blushed and did this weird, high-pitched giggle that I'd never heard come out of her mouth before. "Oh, Tyler's amazing," she said, looking right at my dad instead of at me. "I'm so lucky to have found someone so hardworking and stable." The way she emphasized the word stable, like that was the most attractive quality a man could possibly have, should have been another massive red flag waving right in my face. During dinner, she kept complimenting my dad on absolutely everything she could think of. His watch was gorgeous and expensive looking. His truck outside was incredible and must be so nice to drive. His house sounded amazing from what I'd told her about it. His business success was so impressive for someone who'd started with nothing. She asked him for advice about career stuff, saying she'd love to hear more about entrepreneurship and business development sometime when he had the chance. She was treating him like he was some kind of celebrity instead of just her boyfriend's father. The whole dynamic felt wrong, but I couldn't quite articulate why at the time. The weirdest part was her body language throughout the entire evening. She kept touching her hair and flipping it over her shoulder, adjusting her top to make sure her cleavage was visible, and using gestures and mannerisms that I'd never seen her use with me or anyone else in our social circle. After Dad left that evening, I mentioned to Brittany how different she'd acted compared to her usual personality. Different how? she asked with this innocent tone like she had no idea what I was talking about. I don't know, just more flirty than usual, I said, trying to put my finger on what had bothered me. You were really laying on the charm pretty thick with him. She got defensive immediately, which should have been another warning sign. I was being polite and respectful, she said with an edge to her voice. Isn't that exactly what you wanted? For me to get along well with your family and make a good impression? I thought it went really well between us. Don't you want your dad to like me? It did go well, I admitted. It just seemed like you were trying really hard to impress him specifically. Of course I was trying to impress him, she replied like I was being stupid. He's your father, and his opinion of me really matters. It affects our relationship directly because if he doesn't like me, it'll cause problems between you and me. I guess that reasoning made sense at the time, but something still felt off about the whole interaction. There was an energy there that didn't feel appropriate for a girlfriend meeting her boyfriend's father for the first time. Over the next few months, Dad started coming around to my house much more often than he ever had before. He'd never been the type to just drop by unannounced or hang around for casual visits, but suddenly he was showing up every week or two with some excuse or another. He wanted to borrow a specific tool that he claimed he didn't have at his shop. He needed help moving something heavy and thought I could give him a hand. He wanted to check on how the house was holding up and see if anything needed repairs or maintenance. What I noticed was that these visits always seemed to happen when Brittany was home. Never when she was out running errands, shopping, or doing whatever it was she did during the day. It was always when she was there and available to chat with him. He'd also started offering to help with projects around my house, things he'd never shown any interest in before or offered assistance with. He wanted to help me install new light fixtures in the kitchen and living room. He offered to look at my plumbing and make sure everything was working properly. He suggested we work on landscaping projects together to improve the curb appeal and property value. It'll be good father-son bonding time, he'd say when proposing these projects. Plus, Brittany mentioned she'd love to see the yard fixed up and made more beautiful. Wait a minute. Brittany had mentioned that to him? When had she said anything about wanting yard work done? She'd never brought up landscaping or yard improvements to me, not even once. But I was happy to spend quality time with my dad and work on projects together. And if he wanted to help improve my house with his experience and skills, why would I turn that down? It seemed like a win-win situation for everyone involved. We ended up spending several weekends working on various projects around the house. We built a nice deck off the back of the house, installed a new bathroom vanity that looked much more modern, and planted trees and shrubs to make the landscaping look more mature and established. Brittany would always be around during these work sessions, bringing us cold drinks, asking questions about what we were doing, and complimenting our progress and craftsmanship. She'd wear these little outfits during our workdays, short shorts and tank tops that showed off her body in ways that seemed unnecessary for someone just hanging around the house. When I mentioned it, she'd claim she was just trying to stay cool while helping out and being supportive of our projects. I started noticing how my dad looked at her during these project days, and it made me increasingly uncomfortable. These weren't just casual glances or normal interactions. They were lingering stares that lasted way too long. He'd watch her intently when he thought I wasn't paying attention, especially when she'd bend over to pick something up or reach for something positioned high up on a shelf or counter. When I mentioned this observation to Brittany later, she brushed it off like it was nothing worth worrying about. Older men just appreciate beauty more than guys our age, she said casually. It's completely harmless. He's probably just remembering what it was like to be young and in love. That response should have been red flag number 50 in this whole situation, but I was still in complete denial about what was really happening right under my nose. After 2 full years of Brittany living with me and living entirely off my income without contributing anything, I decided it was finally time to propose to her. She'd been dropping hints constantly and making it increasingly obvious that she expected a proposal soon. She was always showing me her friends' engagement rings on social media, talking about weddings she'd seen on TV or heard about through mutual friends, and leaving bridal magazines around the house in places where I'd definitely see them. Ashley's ring is so beautiful and sparkly, she'd say, while showing me pictures on her phone. She's so lucky to have found someone who loves her that much. I can't wait to be engaged and start planning my own wedding. The hint dropping was about as subtle as a brick to the face, honestly. I started saving up money for an engagement ring, doing research online about what she might like, and trying to figure out how to make the proposal special and memorable. Since Brittany had expensive taste in absolutely everything else in her life, I figured I'd need to spend serious money to make her happy and give her something she'd be proud to show off to her friends. I ended up dropping $200 on a 1.5-carat diamond solitaire from a well-regarded local jewelry store. It was way more money than I should have spent, especially considering our financial situation. But Brittany had made several comments about her friend's tiny ring and how embarrassing it would be to have something small and insignificant. "I just think an engagement ring should reflect how much someone truly loves you," she'd said during one of these conversations. "Like if a guy really loves you and sees a future together, he'll want to show it with something beautiful and substantial that demonstrates his commitment." Translation: buy me an expensive ring, or I'll be disappointed and probably complain about it to everyone we know. I planned the proposal for our 2-year anniversary, which felt like the perfect timing for this next step in our relationship. I took her to this nice lakeside restaurant about an hour away from town, got us a table overlooking the water, and waited for the perfect moment during sunset. I had the ring box in my pocket the entire dinner, sweating bullets and trying not to seem nervous or give away what was about to happen. When dessert arrived at our table, I got down on one knee right there in the restaurant and asked her to marry me. She started crying happy tears immediately and said yes without any hesitation. She kissed me passionately in front of everyone in the restaurant, and the whole place burst into applause for us. It felt absolutely perfect in that moment. She immediately started taking pictures of the ring from every possible angle, posting them on social media with long captions about how happy she was, and calling her friends and family members to share the news. Within about an hour, everyone in her contact list knew that we were officially engaged and planning a wedding. That's when Brittany's true colors really started showing in ways I'd never seen before. The wedding planning became her full-time obsession, and absolutely everything had to be expensive and over the top. She wanted a $45,000 wedding with all the bells and whistles, fancy venue, elaborate flowers, designer dress, professional photographer, high-end catering, the complete works. When I explained that we couldn't realistically afford that kind of money for one day, especially with only one income supporting both of us, she threw tantrums like an actual child. "This is the most important day of my entire life," she'd scream at me. "Don't you want me to be happy? Don't you love me enough to give me the wedding I deserve and have always dreamed about?" She'd show me pictures of other people's weddings constantly. Her friends' ceremonies, people from social media, celebrity weddings from magazines, and talk about how she wanted something just as nice and impressive. "All my friends are having these beautiful, elegant weddings," she'd say while scrolling through endless photos on her phone. "I don't want to be embarrassed by something cheap and small that people will remember for all the wrong reasons." I started working overtime every single chance I could get my hands on. Weekends, holidays, any extra shifts that became available. I was pulling 60 to 70-hour weeks regularly, coming home completely exhausted just trying to make enough money to pay for this wedding she absolutely had to have. Meanwhile, she still wasn't working at all, still spending money freely on clothes and makeup and whatever else caught her attention, and still sleeping until noon every day while doing nothing productive with her time. But the weirdest part of this whole engagement period was how dramatically her relationship with my dad changed after I put that ring on her finger. Before the engagement, she'd been friendly and charming with him, but not overly interested in spending time together or getting his input on things. After we got engaged, suddenly she was constantly asking for his opinion on wedding-related decisions and wanting his input on every single detail. She wanted his thoughts on potential venues and which ones he thought were most elegant and appropriate. She asked for his opinion on flower arrangements and color schemes, claiming he had such sophisticated taste. She wanted his input on decorations and table settings, saying he really understood what made events classy and memorable. "David has such good taste and refined sensibilities," she'd tell me constantly. "He really understands what makes things classy and elegant. His business success shows he knows quality when he sees it." Since when did my dad know anything about wedding planning? The guy had been married exactly once, about 25 years ago, and it was a simple ceremony at the courthouse with maybe 20 people in attendance. But Brittany treated him like he was some kind of wedding expert with years of experience planning elaborate events. She'd call him regularly asking for advice about vendors and venues. She'd ask him to look at venue websites with her and give his honest opinion about which ones were worth the money. She wanted his input on color schemes and menu options, claiming his perspective as a successful businessman was invaluable. Dad started showing up at my house even more frequently after we got engaged, always with some excuse about helping with wedding planning and making sure everything was perfect for his son's big day. He'd come over when I was at work, spending hours with Brittany researching venues online, discussing guest lists and seating arrangements, or looking at decoration ideas and comparing prices. When I'd get home from work and ask Brittany what they'd talked about during these long planning sessions, she'd give me these vague, dismissive answers. "Just boring wedding stuff, baby," she'd say, without looking up from whatever she was doing. We looked at some potential venues, talked about the timeline for booking things. Nothing you'd really be interested in anyway. But I was interested. It was my wedding too, wasn't it? Why was my dad more involved in planning our wedding than I was? Why were they making all these decisions during private meetings when I wasn't around to participate? Brittany's behavior started getting strange and suspicious in other ways during this time too. She'd take these long showers right before I got home from work every single day, like she was washing off evidence of something. She started doing her own laundry instead of making me handle it like she had been doing for the past 2 years. She got secretive about her phone, taking it with her everywhere she went and never leaving it out, where I might accidentally see incoming messages or calls. The gym obsession started around this time too, which was completely out of character for her. Brittany, who'd never exercised a single day in her life beyond walking from the couch to the kitchen for snacks, suddenly joined an expensive gym and hired a personal trainer. With my money, of course, since she still wasn't contributing anything financially to our household. "I want to look absolutely perfect for the wedding," she'd explain when I questioned the sudden interest in fitness. "Don't you want to have a hot wife that you can be proud of?" She'd spend 2 to 3 hours at the gym every single day, coming home all sweaty and energized, talking enthusiastically about her workouts and how amazing her personal trainer was, and how much stronger and more confident she was feeling. Her body was already great. That's part of what had attracted me to her in the first place when I met her at the restaurant. But suddenly she was doing squats and deadlifts like she was training for the Olympics, posting gym selfies on social media, with captions about dedication and transformation. It was suspicious as hell because Brittany had always been incredibly lazy about everything else in her life. This girl couldn't be bothered to do dishes or laundry or contribute anything to our household, but suddenly she's motivated to work out for 3 hours every single day? Please. The final 6 months before everything exploded were filled with weird, suspicious behavior that I kept telling myself was just wedding stress or normal relationship adjustments. But looking back now, the signs were everywhere. And I was just too naive and trusting to see what was happening right in front of my face. Brittany's daily schedule became completely unpredictable in ways that made no sense. She'd tell me she was going wedding dress shopping with her sister or friends, but then come home with no shopping bags and no stories about what she'd tried on or liked. She'd say she was meeting with the caterer to discuss menu options, but then not know basic details about what we'd supposedly decided when I asked her about it later. Her stories never quite added up when I tried to piece together her day, but whenever I questioned her about inconsistencies, she'd get defensive and turn it around on me. "Why are you interrogating me like I'm some kind of criminal?" she'd snap. "I'm trying to plan our wedding and make everything perfect, and you're acting like I'm lying about everything I do." My dad's behavior was getting increasingly weird too during this period. He'd call our house phone during the day when he knew I was at work, specifically asking to talk to Brittany about wedding planning details. When I'd ask Brittany later what they'd discussed during these calls, she'd give me the same vague, dismissive answers she always did. Just details about the reception, seating arrangements for his friends and business associates, she'd say. Nothing really important that you need to worry about. But why was he calling her directly instead of talking to me about wedding plans? Why didn't he want to discuss these things when I was around to participate in the decisions? I started paying closer attention to small details that didn't make sense. Brittany would get text messages at weird hours, like 11 p.m. or early in the morning before most people would be awake. And she'd quickly hide her phone screen when I tried to see who was messaging her. "Just my sister," she'd say quickly, or "just Ashley asking about wedding stuff." But then she'd delete the messages immediately instead of letting them sit in her phone like she used to do. Her car would be warm when she claimed she'd been home all day doing wedding research online. She'd have receipts from restaurants and stores in her purse from places she claimed she hadn't been to. Her gas tank would be significantly lower than it should have been for someone who supposedly only drove to the gym and grocery store. The breaking point should have been the day I came home early from work and discovered some really strange things that didn't add up at all. I'd finished a major repair job ahead of schedule and decided to surprise Brittany, maybe take her out to lunch somewhere nice as a break from all the wedding planning stress. Her car was in the driveway like always, but when I came into the house, I could hear the shower running upstairs. It was 2:30 in the afternoon, which seemed like a weird time for someone to be showering, especially since she usually showered first thing in the morning as part of her routine. I called out to her to let her know I was home, but she didn't answer me. She probably couldn't hear me over the sound of the water running. So I went upstairs to let her know I'd gotten off work early and see if she wanted to do something together. The bathroom door was closed with the shower definitely running, But when I tried the handle, I discovered it was locked. Brittany never locked the bathroom door when she showered. We'd been living together for over 2 years at this point. Why would she suddenly start locking the door for privacy? I knocked on the door and called her name, but she didn't answer for about 30 seconds, which felt like an eternity. Then finally, she called out, "Just a minute," in this weird, panicked voice that I'd never heard her use before. Another full minute passed before she finally opened the door, wrapped in a towel with her hair barely wet. "Oh, you scared me," she said, seeming genuinely startled and nervous. "I didn't hear you come in downstairs. Why was the door locked?" I asked directly. "Was it?" she responded, acting confused. "I didn't realize it was locked. I must have bumped the lock by accident when I was getting in the shower." But her hair wasn't nearly wet enough for someone who'd supposedly been showering for however long the water had been running when I got home. And she seemed jumpy and nervous, like she'd been caught doing something she shouldn't have been doing. When I asked where she'd been earlier that day, she said she'd been home all morning just relaxing and decided to take an afternoon shower to freshen up and feel more energized. But when I walked outside and touched the hood of her car, the engine was still warm. Someone who'd genuinely been home all day wouldn't have a warm engine at 2:30 in the afternoon. Another time, I found a receipt in her purse for lunch at Giuseppe's Italian House, an expensive upscale restaurant across town that we'd never been to together. When I asked her about it, she claimed it was from weeks ago, and she'd just forgotten to throw it away. But the date on the receipt was from just 2 days earlier, and Giuseppe's Italian House is the kind of place that costs around $60 or more per person for lunch. How the hell was Brittany affording $60 lunches at fancy restaurants when she didn't have any money or income? Who was she eating these expensive meals with? And why was she lying about when it happened? I started having this sick, churning feeling in my stomach every time I thought about Brittany and my dad together. The way she acted around him during his visits. The way he looked at her when he thought I wasn't paying attention. All the wedding planning they were doing together without including me. Her increasingly weird behavior and suspicious schedule changes. But I kept pushing those thoughts down because they were too horrible and disgusting to seriously consider. Brittany loved me. She'd said yes when I proposed to her. She was planning our wedding. We were going to spend our lives together. My dad would never betray me like that. He'd raised me, taught me everything I knew about being a man. Always said that family was the most important thing in the world. The idea that they could be having some kind of affair behind my back was so disgusting and impossible that I refused to even consider it seriously as a real possibility. I should have trusted my gut instincts. I should have confronted both of them directly and demanded honest answers. I should have investigated further and gathered more evidence of what was really going on. But I was scared of what I might find out if I dug deeper. So, I convinced myself that I was being paranoid and jealous for no good reason. I told myself that the stress of wedding planning was making me imagine problems that didn't actually exist. God, I was so fucking naive and blind to what was happening. The day that changed everything and destroyed my entire life was a Saturday in October. I remember it perfectly because it was the day my whole world exploded, and I learned what the two people I trusted most in this world were really like underneath their masks. I was working overtime at Summit Construction on a massive highway project. We had this huge deadline that the state was breathing down our necks to meet, and they'd called in emergency weekend work with all hands on deck. The overtime pay was time and a half, which was too good to pass up considering all the wedding expenses I was trying to cover. I'd been there since 6 a.m. working on a massive excavator that had thrown a hydraulic line and was completely out of commission. Brittany knew I'd be working all day and probably wouldn't be home until 8 or 9 p.m., maybe even later if we ran into complications with the repair. She told me the night before that she was planning a girls' day with her sister Amy. They were going to do some shopping, have lunch somewhere nice, and maybe get their nails done together. Just typical weekend sister bonding stuff that seemed completely normal and innocent. Around 1 p.m., we got the excavator running again ahead of our projected schedule. The replacement parts we'd ordered had come in earlier than expected, and the repair work went much smoother than we'd anticipated. My foreman Dave looked around at the crew and said, "Hell, boys, let's call it a day. We're ahead of schedule and it's Saturday. Go home to your families and enjoy the rest of your weekend." I was exhausted but happy about the unexpected free time. I'd still get paid for the full day, and now I had the rest of Saturday to relax or maybe do something fun with Brittany. I decided to surprise her and maybe take her out for a nice lunch if she was back from her sister's day. The drive home was completely normal. I was listening to country music on the radio, thinking about maybe firing up the grill later and having a relaxing evening together. Maybe we could work on some more wedding planning or just watch movies and order takeout. I pulled into my driveway around 1:45 p.m., And immediately I knew something was very wrong with the situation I was seeing. Brittany's white Honda Accord was parked in its usual spot in the driveway, which was immediately weird since she was supposed to be out with her sister Amy for their girls' day. But parked directly behind it, blocking her car in completely, was my dad's black Silverado high country truck. I'd know that truck anywhere. Custom wheels, heavily tinted windows, and the Nevada Plumbing Solutions logo prominently displayed on both side doors. What the hell was my dad doing at my house in the middle of a Saturday afternoon when Brittany was supposed to be out with her sister? I sat in my truck for a full minute trying to think of innocent explanations for this situation. Maybe Brittany had come home sick from her sister's day and called my dad for help with some kind of emergency. Maybe there was a plumbing problem in the house, and she'd called him instead of a regular plumber to save money. Maybe Amy had canceled their plans at the last minute, and Dad just happened to stop by for a visit. But deep in my gut, I knew something was very, very wrong with this picture. I got out of my truck and walked slowly to the front door, using my key to let myself in as quietly as possible. The house was mostly quiet except for sounds coming from upstairs, specifically from the direction of my bedroom. Sounds that I recognized immediately. Sounds that made my stomach drop to the floor and my hands start shaking uncontrollably. My first instinct was to charge upstairs screaming and confront whatever was happening up there. But something made me stop and think more clearly. Maybe it was self-preservation, maybe it was shock, but I found myself pulling out my phone and opening the camera app instead. If what I thought was happening was actually happening up there, I was going to need solid proof. I needed evidence that couldn't be denied, explained away, or dismissed as a misunderstanding. I took off my work boots so I wouldn't make any noise on the stairs and quietly made my way up to the second floor. The sounds got clearer and more obvious with each step I took. There was absolutely no mistaking what I was hearing coming from my bedroom. My bedroom door was wide open. They weren't even trying to hide what they were doing or be discreet about their betrayal. And there they were, in my bed, the bed I'd bought with my own money. My dad, the man who'd raised me after Mom died, who taught me how to change oil and throw a football, who I'd looked up to and respected my entire life, was in bed with my fiancée, the woman I was supposed to marry in just 10 weeks, who I'd been supporting financially for 3 years, who was wearing the $8,200 engagement ring I'd worked overtime to pay for, was on top of him. But this wasn't just mechanical, emotionless cheating. She was completely into it, more enthusiastic and passionate than she'd ever been with me in our entire relationship. She was making sounds I'd never heard come out of her mouth, saying things that made me want to vomit on the spot. "God, you feel so much better than him," she was moaning loudly. "I can't believe I wasted 3 years pretending to be satisfied with that boy when I could have had a real man like you this whole time." My dad was grabbing her ass with both hands, telling her how much tighter and hotter she was than girls her age usually were. They were talking about me like I was some pathetic, inadequate loser while fucking in the bed I'd bought, in the house I owned, with money I'd earned working 60-hour weeks to support her lazy lifestyle. "He has absolutely no idea what's been going on," my dad was saying between thrusts. "Poor kid thinks he's getting married to a faithful woman. He's so naive and trusting." Brittany actually laughed at that. "He actually believes I'm at the gym for 3 hours every day," she said mockingly. "As if I'd waste time exercising when I could be here with you instead." They were laughing together, laughing about how stupid I was, how easy it had been to fool me completely, how pathetic I was for working overtime to pay for a wedding to a woman who was fucking my own father behind my back. I recorded for about 3 minutes, making absolutely sure I got clear shots of both their faces and clear audio of their voices. I needed undeniable evidence of what they were doing, something that couldn't be explained away or dismissed later. The whole time my hands were shaking uncontrollably, but my mind was crystal clear and focused. I wasn't heartbroken or devastated in that moment. I was absolutely fucking furious. The rage was building inside me like nothing I'd ever experienced before. When I'd recorded enough evidence to destroy both of them completely, I cleared my throat loudly and said, "Having fun?" The scrambling that followed was absolutely pathetic to watch. Brittany screamed and dove under the covers like a teenager caught by her parents. My dad jumped up from the bed, grabbing frantically for his clothes while trying to maintain some kind of dignity. But I kept the camera rolling, capturing every second of their panic and humiliation. "Turn that off right now!" Brittany shrieked from under the blanket. "This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" I said, amazed at how calm and controlled my voice sounded. "Because it looks exactly like you're fucking my dad in my bed while I'm working to pay for your wedding." My dad tried to take control of the situation like he always did. "Son, let's talk about this like adults," he said while pulling on his pants. Adults don't fuck their son's fiance. I cut him off immediately. Get your shit and get out of my house, both of you. Brittany was crying now, these dramatic sobs that were supposed to make me feel sorry for her. Baby, please, it just happened, she wailed. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. We can work through this. Just happened? I asked coldly. How long has this been going on? Since we got engaged, she whispered, probably realizing that lying at this point was useless. She couldn't answer beyond that, just kept sobbing like she was the victim in this situation. I looked at my dad, who was finishing getting dressed and trying to avoid eye contact with me. Get out, I told him directly. You're dead to me. It took them about 10 minutes to get dressed and leave my house. I sat downstairs the entire time, planning my revenge and thinking about exactly how I was going to destroy both of their lives. Over the next week, while they kept trying to contact me with pathetic apologies and explanations, I was busy gathering information and setting my plan in motion. You see, I knew things about my dad's business that could completely destroy him. City contracts worth $900,000 annually that had strict morality clauses built into them. Tax issues he'd been hiding from the IRS for years. Safety violations that I'd helped him cover up in the past because I thought family loyalty mattered. I also reached out to friends who could help me execute this plan. One worked for the city inspector's office. Another was a newspaper reporter who specialized in exposing business corruption. Someone else worked for the state tax department and owed me a favor, but I let them think they'd gotten away with it first. I wanted them to feel secure and start making plans for their future together before I pulled the rug out from under them. After a week of no contact from me, they started getting desperate. Brittany had been kicked out by her parents when they found out what she'd done. My dad was getting nervous about the silence and probably wondering if I was planning something. They showed up at my workplace together, which took some serious balls considering what they'd done. Tyler, my dad called out as I was finishing up a repair job. We really need to talk about this situation. Brittany spoke first, trying to take control of the conversation. Look, we've all made mistakes here, but David and I want to make this right. He's prepared to give you $45,000 to help you start fresh somewhere else. We're in love, and we want to be together. My dad added, we want to get married, and we'd like your blessing. It would mean everything to us if you could find it in your heart to forgive us. The audacity was absolutely incredible. They wanted my blessing after completely betraying me and destroying my life. Plus, Brittany continued, David's going to take care of me properly now. We're looking at houses together, talking about starting a family. I'll finally have the stable, secure life I deserve. I pretended to consider their offer seriously. Let me think about it, I said. How about we meet tomorrow evening at Giuseppe's Italian house to discuss the details? They both looked relieved, probably thinking they'd managed to buy their way out of the consequences of their actions. The next evening, they showed up at Giuseppe's Italian house dressed like they were celebrating some kind of victory. They probably thought they'd successfully manipulated me into accepting their relationship and taking their money. I was waiting at the table with a manila envelope sitting in front of me. Before we discuss anything, I said, handing the envelope directly to Brittany, I have something for you. She opened it curiously and pulled out high-quality printed photographs from the video I'd recorded. Both of their faces were clearly visible in the images, leaving absolutely no room for denial about what they'd been doing. What is this? She whispered, her face going completely pale as she realized what she was looking at. Insurance? I said calmly. You see, while you two were playing house and planning your future together, I've been busy. That's exactly when my friend Dave from the city inspector's office appeared at our table, right on schedule. Mr. Chen, he said to my dad in an official tone, we need to discuss some serious irregularities in your city contracts. Safety violations, material substitutions, cost inflation. We're opening a full investigation into your business practices, and all city contracts are suspended immediately pending the outcome. My dad's face went completely gray as he processed what was happening. What's going on here? What is this about? What's happening is that David's about to lose about 60% of his business income, I explained with satisfaction. Those city contracts were worth approximately $900,000 per year, weren't they, Dad? Brittany was starting to panic as she realized this wasn't going to be the simple negotiation they'd expected. What else did you do? She asked frantically. I sent copies of our little home movie to everyone in both of your contact lists, I said matter-of-factly. Friends, family members, co-workers, church members. I wanted everyone to know exactly what kind of people you really are underneath your masks. She gasped audibly. You didn't actually do that. I also contacted the state tax department about those unreported cash payments you've been hiding, Dad, I continued. They're conducting a full audit of your books. Something about $180,000 in unreported income over the past few years. My dad sat down heavily in his chair, the weight of everything hitting him at once. "You're destroying everything I've worked for," he said quietly. "You destroyed it when you decided to fuck my fiancé," I replied without any emotion. "You made that choice, not me." I turned my attention to Brittany. "And you're going to get a real job and pay me back the $26,000 I spent supporting your lazy lifestyle for 3 years. "I don't have that kind of money," she protested weakly. "Then you better start working 40 hours a week like everyone else in the real world," I told her. I stood up to leave, but I wasn't finished with my dad yet. "Oh, and Dad, you're signing over that Lake Tahoe cabin to me. Consider it therapy money for the psychological damage you've caused." "That property is worth $220,000, he said in shock. "You should have thought about that before you betrayed your own son," I replied. "Actions have consequences." As I walked out of the restaurant, I could hear Brittany desperately begging my dad to fix everything and make it all go away. And I could hear him realizing that he'd lost his business, his reputation, and his relationship with his son, all for a gold-digging woman who would probably dump him the moment his money ran out. That's exactly what happened, by the way. Within 2 months, when it became clear that his business was ruined and his financial situation was destroyed, Brittany moved on to her next victim. She left him for some other successful older man who could provide the lifestyle she felt she deserved. My dad lost everything: his business, his house, his reputation in the community, and his relationship with me. Last I heard, he was working for someone else's plumbing company, making a fraction of what he used to earn. As for me, I kept the house, got the cabin, and learned a valuable lesson about trusting people and recognizing red flags. I'm doing just fine now, and I've never regretted the revenge I took on both of them. They got exactly what they deserved.